list containing the names and photographs of 100 prominent Canadians and asked to rate each according to trustworthiness. They were then asked to select which personality they trusted the most, giving us our list of the 50 most trusted Canadians. Wow! What an informative study! That's just a loophole to get away with publishing a magazine titled The Canadians You Trust, and then putting Stephen Harper and other corrupt politicians on the list. Because what they should have called the magazine was Canadians Nearly 1,200 People Trust, from a pre-selected media-biased list of figures used only to spread propaganda. I mean, who has the power to tell you who to trust, other than yourself? Well, apparently Reader's Digest. But wait a minute, I thought CNN was most trusted. Maybe that was based on another elaborate trust poll, where CNN wasn't on the list. Here's a quick word fact. The literal translation for the word entertainment is diversion. Ah, it all makes perfect sense now. Because people are more worried about how Gen still can't get it together, inch by inch these global elitists are getting closer to their goal of world domination. Thanks, Rick. You know, I always had a feeling you would be involved in the destruction of the world. The media is doing such a great job at convincing everyone that politics in Canada is as simple as red versus blue, when in reality, as we've seen behind closed doors, they all belong to the same clubs, all serving the same corporate masters. Consider politicians like a box of Smarties, all different colors on the outside, but on the inside, they're all full of the same crap. When people get sick of red, blue steps in to give the illusion of democracy. This game goes back and forth for years and years and years. Sometimes we get a little bit of hope from orange or green, but because they don't have the powerful corporate backing behind them like blue and red, they'll never get into power unless they sell their souls as well. It's not so bad. It's a little bit sour, but oh, well, maybe these ones aren't as bad. But democracy isn't only a joke in Canada. Let's hear a good knee slapper from Al Gore, former vice president of the superpower of the world, the United States.
I am Al Gore. I used to be the next president of the United States of America. I don't find that particularly funny.
Pretty good material, eh? He just cracked a joke about the widely known fact that George Bush Jr. had rigged the 2000 U.S. election. That's a former vice president of the United States joking about democracy not working. And one has to seriously wonder, why didn't Al Gore make a movie about the U.S. election being rigged by the biggest laughingstock president the world has ever seen? I mean, to me, democracy being a joke is much scarier than climate change, especially since that he would have had much more power to fix things as president than just some guy with a slideshow. But it didn't really bother Al Gore since he's in the club as well. So it isn't his position to actually do what's right, but rather to do what he's told. Which is why the joke is funny. The real sad thing, though, is the audience thinks they're laughing with him. This is the reason why pro-voting ads are sponsored by the government and are practically shoved down our throats. They want us to play into the game that gives them the power to control us. Look, if voting really made a difference, our monetary system would have been fixed by now. So without further ado, let us introduce the new Smarty of Canada, Count Ignatieff.
But he's kind of quirky. Like, as a human rights expert, there's a lot of his writing that suggests that some people are entitled to human rights and others aren't. But the essence of human rights is everybody's entitled to human rights. So it comes from his experience of being Russian royalty. His grandfather was an aide to Tsar Nicholas. And one of the only families that escaped from Russia from the Bolsheviks was the Ignatieffs. And he's got he's got this kind of aristocratic, almost royalty attitude.
Michael's grandfather, Count Paul Ignatieff, was senior advisor to Emperor Nicholas II of Russia. He also served as his last Minister of Education. Why the last? Because as a result of the Russian Revolution in 1918, the whole royal family was arrested and executed. Except for Michael Ignatieff's grandfather, who was apparently released by a sympathetic guard and fled to Canada. Count Ignatieff's son George grew up to become a Rhodes Scholar, worked in the Department of External Affairs, became a permanent representative to NATO, also became Canadian ambassador and president of the UN Security Council. Finally, when Michael was born, opportunities were paved in front of him by his family, and he was able to attend and later teach in universities across the world, such as Oxford, Harvard, Cambridge, University of London, and a lot more. As a matter of fact, Michael Ignatieff has spent half of his life outside of Canada, becoming educated and prepared for bigger things. In 2004, Ian Davey, son of the Canadian Senator Keith Davey, and a lawyer, Daniel Brock, both liberal organizers, went to the United States where Ignatieff was teaching at Harvard still, and told him that it was time for him to establish himself in Canadian politics in order to become Prime Minister. And in an ultra-rare occasion, Ignatieff was crowned Liberal leader half a year before the Liberal convention was held. But again, this shouldn't be a surprise to any of you by now, since we know they're all buddies behind the scenes. Ignatieff released a book this year in April called True Patriot Love, in a sad attempt to look like a Canadian patriot. But just writing a book and declaring something doesn't make it true. You can't judge a book by its cover. But it does conveniently add to the deception.
Let me close just one more thing on this question of sovereignty. It's very difficult for a large country to accept that somebody is going to come in, like the United States or like the Europeans, and is basically going to come in and say, you're not doing your regulation in a proper way. Fair game. But what's going to happen when China and India are economies as powerful as the United States or Europe? And what's going to happen when there's a mortgage meltdown in India? What's going to happen when a Chinese hedge fund goes under? And that the results of that tsunami don't stop at the Chinese or the Indian border, but that in fact you find them in Idaho and Iowa and California. Who's going to deal with that? Unless we're prepared to understand that in fact we're all going to have to give up a little bit of our sovereignty in order to make the world work. I hope that that also is something that the G20 comes to deal with. So those are the issues that I've got to deal with. I think that we are really at the beginning of a very different era. 1944, the great minds of the world, Dexter White, John Maynard Keynes, and a bunch, essentially laid the foundations for the Bretton Woods institutions in the United Nations. And they built a system which functioned for over 50 to 60 years. I think that it's time to renew that vision. A very different world than one that they did, an independent nation states who simply came together but could ignore essentially what was going on inside those countries. That day is over, thanks to Alan Locke. I think we've got to take it one step further. And we've got to say that, in fact, countries have responsibilities to their neighbors. And their neighbors are in every nook and cranny of the world. And I believe that that is going to become the debate of our generation. And it's one that I'm very happy to share with you. Thank you very much.
If you're watching this movie thinking to yourself,
what the fuck?
Just remember that the government works for the people, not the other way around. These issues should be a concern to all political parties, and really anyone that can count to two. Therefore, we shouldn't have to depend on any conventional election to resolve these problems. Besides, as we've seen, every political party is guilty. So in hopes to create a freer and more prosperous Canada, we will be supplying information on our website on how to contact your government officials with facts about these underlying problems. Share it with other people as well, because we need to at least establish a dialogue before moving on to any sort of remedy. Never doubt that a small group of people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. So please, get up and do something, because the future of our country depends on it.
Oh, Canada,
abroad and sold around.
And all our ranks command. With a glowing heart we see thee fall.
From true morality.
From far and wide, oh Canada.
We've lost our sovereignty.
And free state, baby.
God keep our land.
Hopefully debt-free.
Oh Canada, we have no dignity.
Oh, Canada, what's left to stand?
From